Welcome to NavIC. Imagine a time when India was still a young nation. There were limited resources, limited technology, and almost no independent space infrastructure. Yet, a small group of Indian scientists had a bold question. Can India build its own space capabilities? That question marked the beginning of one of the most remarkable journeys in modern India. Today, India launches satellites, explores the Moon and Mars, operates its own navigation system, and is preparing for human spaceflight. But how did India get here? This is the story of India's space journey. India's space program began in the early 1960s, with scientists such as Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, who is widely regarded as the father of the Indian space program. The vision was not simply to explore space for prestige. Sarabhai believed space technology could help solve problems on Earth, from communication and weather forecasting to education, agriculture, and disaster management. In 1963, India launched its first sounding rocket from Thumba in Kerala. The facilities were extremely modest, but the ambition was enormous. India was taking its first steps toward the stars. In 1969, the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, was established. The next challenge was clear. India needed to learn how to build its own satellites, and even more importantly, launch them independently. The journey was not easy. India faced technological limitations, financial constraints, and restrictions on access to advanced technologies. But instead of giving up, Indian scientists focused on developing indigenous capabilities. And slowly, the foundation was built. In 1975, India launched Aryabhata, its first satellite. It was named after the ancient Indian mathematician and astronomer Aryabhata. Although the satellite was launched with Soviet assistance, it represented a major milestone. India was no longer simply observing the space age. India was becoming a participant in it. India's next major challenge was developing its own launch vehicles. The early PSLV-3 program faced setbacks, including launch failures. But failure became part of the learning process. In 1980, India successfully placed the Rohini satellite into orbit using an Indian launch vehicle. That achievement demonstrated something extremely important. India could launch its own satellites into space. From there, the technology continued to evolve. SLV and ASLV programs eventually gave way to more capable launch vehicles, such as the PSLV and the GSLV. The Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, or PSLV, became one of the most important rockets in India's space program. It developed a reputation for reliability and became a key vehicle for launching Earth observation, scientific, and navigation satellites. And PSLV did something else. It helped India enter the international commercial launch market. India was no longer just building satellites for itself. It was beginning to launch satellites for other countries too. Then came a new ambition. Could India explore other worlds? In 2008, India launched Chandrayaan-3, its first lunar mission. The mission helped expand our understanding of the Moon and became particularly famous for evidence associated with the presence of water molecules on the lunar surface. India had now moved from launching satellites around Earth to exploring another celestial body, and the next destination was even farther away. In 2013, India launched the Mars Orbiter mission, popularly known as Mangalyaan. The spacecraft traveled hundreds of millions of kilometers to reach Mars. In 2014, it successfully entered Martian orbit. What made the mission especially remarkable was its efficiency and the fact that India achieved Mars orbit on its first attempt. It demonstrated India's growing ability to design and operate deep space missions. But India's lunar ambitions were far from over. After the challenges faced by Chandrayaan-2's landing attempt, ISRO returned to the Moon with Chandrayaan-3. And on 23 August 2023, India achieved a historic milestone. The lander Vikram successfully touched down on the lunar surface. India became the first country to successfully land in the Moon's southern polar region, and the fourth country to achieve a soft landing on the Moon. The moment was watched across the world. It wasn't just a successful landing. It represented decades of scientific learning, engineering, and persistence. India's space program is not only about exploration. Space technology has become deeply connected with everyday life. India has developed satellites for communication, weather forecasting, agriculture, disaster management, and Earth observation. India has also developed NavIC, its regional satellite navigation system. These technologies can support transportation, emergency services, surveying, mapping, and many other applications. So when we talk about India's space program, we're not talking only about rockets. We're talking about technology that can directly affect life on Earth. Now India is preparing for another historic chapter, putting Indian astronauts into space. The Mangalyaan program aims to demonstrate India's capability for human spaceflight. This is far more complicated than sending an unmanned satellite into orbit. Human spaceflight requires life support systems, crew safety, environmental control, emergency systems, and extremely high levels of reliability. If successful, Mangalyaan could mark another major milestone in India's space journey. And India's ambitions don't stop there. India is working toward increasingly sophisticated space missions and technologies. Future plans include deeper lunar exploration, solar and planetary science, human spaceflight, space stations, and stronger international cooperation. India is also seeing increasing participation from private space companies. This could create a broader space ecosystem, involving startups, researchers, engineers, and established institutions. The Indian space sector is therefore entering a new phase, from a government-led program to a much larger national space economy. India's space journey is not simply a story about rockets. It is a story about vision, persistence, and self-reliance. From a modest launch site at Thumba to satellites orbiting Earth, from Chandrayaan to Mangalyaan, from NavIC to the dream of sending Indian astronauts into space, India's journey has been built step by step. And perhaps the most important lesson is this: great achievements don't happen overnight. They begin with a vision, they grow through learning, they survive failure, and eventually they reach the stars. So where does India's space journey go from here? Perhaps the most exciting chapter is still waiting to be written. Jai Hind.